Did you know that in the USA they still experiment on dogs? Yep, in the US there are dog factory farms that breed dogs for the sole purpose of often torturous experimentation, after which the dogs are killed because they are no longer of use. And what's even sadder, often the experimentation has nothing to do with medical research, but rather trivial commercial interests. And in almost all cases, dogs provide little to no unique scientific value. And I mean, historically, some of the tests that they've done on dogs are bad. Like this one where they force-fed dogs detergent, which killed some of them. And so we're trying to stop this from happening. But we need your help. And I'm gonna get into what I mean at the end of the video and who this we is. But first, some background. You might be shocked to know that this is more common than you think. According to the USDA's Animal Usage Report, nearly 61,000 dogs were used for the US for experimentation in 2016 alone. In the US, both corporations and academic institutions subject dogs to excruciating experiments that have been called trivial, even useless, and have been called just as abusive as the practices in Asia that the West is critical of. And like any animal in the animal testing industry, their lives are hell from beginning to end. As soon as they're born, they're treated like objects rather than individuals. They're locked into small cages, they can hardly move, and they're on the receiving end of torturous experiments. And here's the thing, these dogs are just like any dog you could have at home. They can feel happiness, they can feel sadness, they can feel fear. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of these dogs are a breed that most of us are probably familiar with: beagles. And they're considered ideal because of their docile, human-trusting personality. In other words, the very traits that have made them such loving and loyal companions to humans are the ones that humans exploit to best manipulate them in labs. One of the biggest firms in the US that provides beagles to research facilities is called Ridgland Farms in Dane County, Wisconsin. And in April 2017, activists with the animal rights network Direct Action Everywhere walked into an unlocked door at Ridgland Farms and documented what they found inside. And because of their work, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist was able to publish a report with their findings, which is the report that I've been referencing. I would recommend reading the entire report, by the way. It's really a shocking and worthwhile read. But anyways, another big problem in the industry is that there's a lack of enforcement of legal standards. The USDA's own Inspector General has described the fines imposed on laboratories for animal welfare violations as basically meaningless. But honestly, I was appalled at what is legal currently. For those of you who want to skip this part, I get it, it's pretty bad, but here's what they're allowed to do and have done. Dogs are often purposely starved or put into a state of severe thirst to induce behavior that they would otherwise not engage in. They are frequently bred deliberately to have crippling, excruciating diseases, or sometimes are brought into life just to have their organs, eyes, and other body parts removed and studied as puppies, and then quickly killed. They are force-fed laundry detergents, pesticides, and industrial chemicals to the point of continuous vomiting and death. They are injected with lethal pathogens such as salmonella or rabies. They have artificial sweetener injected into their veins that causes the dog's testicles to shrink before they are killed and exsanguinated. Holes are drilled into their skulls so that viruses can be injected into their brains. And that's all legal. So yeah, I'm pretty sure we can all agree that sounded more like the script of the next Saw movie. So now with that background, before I continue, I want to talk about someone else who's going to be central to understanding the rest of the story. This is Wayne Hsiung. Wayne is an attorney who got his JD at the University of Chicago Law School, one of the best in the world, and was a former law professor at Northwestern Pritzker School of Law, another top school. But yeah, so when it comes to law, he probably knows his stuff. And he probably could have spent his whole life in a big law firm and called it a day. But instead, he's become a key player in defending animal rights. He's a co-founder of 2 animal rights groups, Direct Action Everywhere and the Simple Heart Initiative, and he just spent nearly 6 weeks in jail for conspiring to commit trespass at 2 poultry farms, where he and fellow protesters said that chickens and ducks were being mistreated. And the way that he and his supporters see it, there are laws in 14 states that allow people to rescue dogs left in hot cars. So they argue that rescuing unwell animals who are suffering in factory farms is equally justified. And while in jail, he still ate vegan the whole time. 107 peanut butter jelly sandwiches in a row. So I don't want to hear any excuses from the rest of y'all. So remember how I mentioned that some activists documented their findings of the conditions of the farm? Well yeah, our boy Wayne here was there investigating, and here's what he said. As you approach the facility, the smell is overwhelming. Exactly the same smell from a dog meat slaughterhouse in China. And when they entered, they found hundreds of beagles stacked in small, filthy cages. Many had untreated infections or wounds. Some were suffering from such torment that they were exhibiting psychotic behavior, such as endlessly spinning in the cage. The facility was a factory farm for dogs. In addition to documenting the abuse, they ended up rescuing 3 beagles. One was a blind puppy named Julie. So afterwards, they filed a complaint to the local authorities, alleging violations of the Federal Animal Welfare Act, as well as animal cruelty law. But the government did not investigate the allegations of animal cruelty at Ridgland Farms. Instead, 4 years later, they reversed Uno'd and said, you know what? F*** these animal activist losers. Let's go after them. In August 2021, the district attorney of Dane County, Ismael Ozanne, filed charges of felony burglary and felony theft against Wayne, Eva Hamer, and Paul Pickelsheimer. I really hope I said those right. But they faced up to 16 years in prison. So for 3 years, Wayne and his team have been pursued by the government and have been preparing to go to court over this, with the trial date being today. Yes, today, March 18th, 2024. But you won't see anything about the trial today. Why? Because they don't want you to know the truth. No, I'm just kidding. It's because, surprisingly, only 10 days before the trial, all charges were dropped. But instead of being happy, here's what Wayne had to say about it.
I just found out they're dismissing all charges in the Ridgland case. I'd be surprised to hear that I'm also incredibly frustrated and even disturbed. There were incredibly important and novel legal issues we were trying to address in this court case, including whether citizens have the right under the First Amendment to exercise their conscience and act with compassion when they see a suffering animal, whether animals are things, as the prosecution and government argued in this case, or whether they are sentient beings with legal rights. None of these issues will be addressed now, because the prosecution dropped the case.
More specifically, they wanted to establish if animals could be considered legal persons under the law, which is what companies and corporations are considered. And they don't even have a pulse. But yeah, according to Wayne's team, a favorable ruling could have implications far beyond this single case, creating a precedent that animals are persons with legal rights, including a right to life and liberty under the Fifth Amendment, which would be a step in the right direction for ending animal cruelty and saving more animals like Julie. Now that the trial is dropped, the opportunity is lost. Now is probably a good time to mention that when people talk about animal rights, this is what they mean. I feel like it's always a big misconception. Like, people flip out when you mention animal rights. Like, they think you want to give them the right to own property, but it's like, no, dude. It's the right not to be tortured. And some people might say, I get it, but why do you have to break the law? Why do you have to go to jail? Can't you do this the right way? What Wayne has to say about that is, historically, incarceration has been a part of virtually every social movement that succeeded. And off the top of my head, I can think of Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela. These are two examples of that, being incarcerated for fighting for their respective social justice movements. And as Wayne sees it, animal rights and speciesism are the next frontier of social justice. So that leads us to today, the day the trial was supposed to happen. If you ask me, a reason that they dropped the charges is because they realized it would look really bad for them and stir up a lot of public outrage. So, in an effort to raise awareness of what's going on, trial or not, Wayne's team has organized a day of social media action and phone calls. Today. This is part of it. Today, animal advocates across the nation are demanding that the Dane County District Attorney, Ismael Ozanne, prosecute Ridgland Farms for animal cruelty. I've been in contact with Wayne's team, and here's what they need from us. Make a phone call, send an email, make a social media post, or otherwise contact Ismael Ozanne and lead prosecutor Alexandra Keyes, demanding that they prosecute Ridgland Farms for animal cruelty. And if you're posting this on social media, make sure to use the hashtags Beagle Betrayal, Right to Rescue, and Ridgland Trial. With enough public support, we can not only save all the beagles at Ridgland Farms, but we can also end the use of dogs in experiments entirely. Holy shit, I just realized he's a Democrat. So this might work. So make sure to like and share this video, all other content you see around this topic, so we can reach as many people as possible. And if y'all want to stay up to date with Wayne and his efforts, check out his newsletter on simpleheart.org. Anyways, I'll end the video with some updates on Julie, the blind beagle rescued 7 years ago. Unfortunately, she still suffers from PTSD. She still spins, but not as frantically as before. And unlike the thousands of beagles at Ridgeland, she is now in a loving home. Cool. Well, in the description, I've left a lot of links and resources for y'all to use. So hope y'all join us. Happy posting, and let's end animal cruelty.